Welcome to the Uncivil Mentality Podcast. I'm Erik Vidal.
And I'm Reilly Kilbride.
Let's go. Let's go.
All right, we have a guest today. Katelyn, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
All right, so I don't even know where to start. So I guess we'll start with like kind of where I met Reilly. How about that?
There you go. That's a good starting point.
So we'll rewind a little bit. I joined the National Guard in 2019, right before I was going to physical therapy school. And this is a funny story. So my best friend at the time, we were best friends because of CrossFit. So she realized she didn't like accounting after having gone to college for 5 years and getting all of her accounting degrees. So she decided to get her private pilot's license and then go fly for FedEx because we were living in Memphis. And she was like, man, this is basically like I'm paying for college all over again. And I was like, yeah, I don't know why you're doing that. So she, a month later, was like, guess what I just did? And I was like, what? She joined the Air National Guard so that they would pay for her to train to be a pilot. She could go fly for FedEx, but they would pay her while going through that training. And then she got to serve in the military as well. And I was like, dude, I wonder if they have that for physical therapy because I just gotten into school for that. So all I did when I walked into the recruiter's office was like, hey, do y'all have physical therapists in the Air National Guard? And they were like, no, we don't. Go check Army. So I walked like next door to the Army recruiter's office. And I was like, hey, do y'all have physical therapists in the Army National Guard? And they're like, yeah, we do. And I was like, cool, sign my life away. Needless to say, I am not a physical therapist in the National Guard. So all that was in my contract was that I would go to OCS since I already had my college degree. So I went to basic training, recruit sustainment program, and then started OCS, Officer Candidate School. And I did the state-run OCS. So it's like an 18-month program. So phase 1 is your 2 weeks in the summer down at, ours was at Fort McClellan, Alabama, which is miserably hot. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then drill back at the state. So this was in Smyrna, Tennessee for the next 12 months. That was phase 2. And then phase 3, we go back down to Fort McClellan, Alabama, and then commissioned. Well, when I was in OCS and when I was commissioning, they were like, all right, you got to pick a branch. And I was like, I want to be a physical therapist. And they were like, no, you can't do that. And I was like, what do you mean? You have physical therapists here? And they were like, yeah, we have one slot. So one position in the whole Tennessee Army National Guard physical therapists, and we currently have 4 people in it. And I was like, oh, all right, let's go. So then I was like, all right, well, let me just get back to practicing physical therapy the best I can. So what's the shortest BOLIC, which is your basic officer leadership course? And they're like, Adjutant General. And I was like, what's that? They're like, HR. And I was like, all right, whatever, let's do it. So then I got into a unit here as a battalion S1, which is like their HR personnel, and was doing that. Halfway through, they were like, what do you really want to do? I was like, physical therapy. Like, I want to do something medical. Like, that's what I'm doing in the civilian world. That's what I want to do in the Guard. And they were like, how about you be a medical operations officer instead? And I was like, okay, that sounds cool. So I switched units, so then I was drilling closer to Memphis. And I went in as the brigade medical operations officer. And about that time as well, they also sent me to AG BOLIC, Basic Officer Leadership Course, in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So that's where I met Reilly, because when I went to basic training, they were like, oh, you're going to relax in Jackson, it'll be great. I was like, there was nothing relaxing about basic training. But now when you go to BOLIC, that was amazing. So we would do PT in the morning, and we'd have class like 9 to 3:30 or 4 every day, and then I would go to Carolina CrossFit after because I was like, okay, I need to get my workout on. And that's where I met Reilly and actually some of my best friends at Carolina CrossFit, and have been as much as I can traveling back ever since. So then finished that Bullock, was still doing medical operations officer back home. So I was like, why did I go to this course? And I was like, oh yeah, to meet great friends. And then so yeah, that's kind of where I met Reilly, how I got into physical therapy, or how I got into the guard. And through that position, that medical operations officer, last August, we actually had a medical sync throughout the whole state. So in Tennessee, we have 4 MACOMs, so major commands, so an engineer brigade, armored cavalry regiment, a sustainment brigade, and then troop command. So all of the medical operations officers, the brigade surgeons all got together, and we were just getting like, hey, we got to get medical readiness up in this state. We got to get our deployability up. How are we going to do that? And then our deputy state surgeon had mentioned this program H2F, which is holistic health and fitness. And I was like, hey, I know what that is. How can I get involved in that? Because when we were at Bullock at Fort Jackson, we had to write an information paper and give a brief on something Army related. And I was like, well, I don't really want to do anything like adjutant general because that just doesn't interest me. So I was searching and I found Army FM 7-0, which is holistic health and fitness. And it focuses on 5 domains of individual readiness. So physical readiness, mental readiness, spiritual readiness, and then my favorite, sleep readiness and nutritional readiness. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. The Army is now focused on holistic health, not just, hey, can you pass your ACFT? Can you ruck 12 miles? But how are you as a human just getting better so that we reduce injury, we improve performance, we just make better humans? And so then I was like, sir, how do I get involved in this? And he was like, you know what H2F is? And I was like, yes, sir. So I got in contact with the NCOIC, so the non-commissioned officer in charge here at the state, and was like, Sergeant, how can I get involved in this program? And so I was just going to help out with a few extra annual trainings this year. And then because I was still a physical therapist at the time down in Georgia, and then that ended up not working out. So back in December, I moved back to Memphis, back in with my parents. And I was like, well, I'm about to be doing a whole bunch more stuff with the Army. Let me just get a few part-time jobs in Memphis until the job that I had wanted opens up in the summer. And on Christmas Eve, he was like, hey, do you want to come on ADOS orders, so active duty operational support orders, as the officer in charge of the OIC for H2F in Tennessee? And I was like, yeah, I do. Active duty. I get to deal with H2F the whole time. So I've been doing that since January up here in Nashville now, and it's been phenomenal.
That, my friend, was a wild ride. I feel like I just went on a roller coaster, but it ended fucking great. Like it sounded
Heck
cool.
yeah.
Right.
One too many acronyms for me though. Like the
Yeah.
military will make an
I
acronym for
tried to spell them
everything.
out for you.
Yeah. She did a great job, except for
Yeah.
BOLIC. So BOLIC, Basic Officer Leadership Course. That's what BOLIC stands
Yes.
for. And my question is, where are you currently?
So I'm currently a medical operations officer at the Engineer Brigade here in Tennessee.
So
you're
Memphis?
back in Tennessee.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So you're not in South Carolina with
No,
Carolina
No.
not
CrossFit.
anymore.
Yeah. Not no more. Okay. I'm not sure if you said that before or not, but I was like, damn, where is this girl located currently?
Yeah,
Like,
right?
where is your
Carmen,
precise
San
location?
Diego. She's fucking
Yeah,
everywhere.
where is this lady at? Oh man. What
But
a wild
Katelyn,
ride. And the only
when I
reason
w-
why I know phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 is because I as well went to OCS.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's
So I
go.
was real quick story. I was
Heck yeah.
active duty. I did it was shy of 3 years because I had a 2-year contract with the
Okay.
Army because I wanted to be a medic. So I went in as a medic. It was 91 whiskey, which turned out to be a 68 whiskey. So I was low
Mhm.
enlisted. Signed my 2-year contract, no bonus. Did my 2 years, but I got stop lost shy of my 2 years. So I deployed, went to Iraq, came back. So my contract was extended like 6 months or
Okay.
8 months. Anyways, just shy of 3 years. I got out. I got out the army, did the ACAP, did the out processing, and back then all I wanted to do was just get out. Just show me the way out. I don't want to be anymore. I miss home. I get back home and now I'm like, shit, I miss the army. How do I get back in?
Heck
And
yeah.
I felt like there was like a void, right? Because you're with your boys, 24/7. You just got back from Iraq, whatever, and then you always have your weapon with you, and you have your water, and you have your camelback or backpack and rucksack, and you're living out of a duffel bag. So I felt like I was missing something, so I went back the OCS route. Because I had some college credit and I was prior service, they gave me the option to go OCS, even though I didn't have my college degree. All I had
Okay.
to do was finish the 60 credits, during my OCS tenure, which I did, and then you can move on to becoming a second lieutenant at the end of the
Mhm.
program, and then you have to have your bachelor's degree within like a 2 year period. I forget the program. I don't know exactly the specific details, but long story short, I they gave me a transportation corps bullock graduating OCS. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to go to flight school. So I went to the flight board, got picked up for a warrant officer slot. So I,
Oh,
I
that's
turned in
awesome.
my I turned in my commission as a second lieutenant, became a warrant because OCS checks the blocks for walks, which is warrant officer
Hmm.
school. I didn't have to go to walks because I just completed OCS. So became a chief uh, warrant officer one, and then went to flight school. I was out in Fort Rucker for a year and a half. Got out, and then I was with the Florida Army National Guard till
Oh,
about
let's go.
2016. Yeah. So I flew Helos. I flew Blackhawks um, for
Oh,
the Florida Army National Guard. Yeah. But that was
that's
like
so cool.
a long time ago. It feels like it was a lifetime ago.
I'm just sitting here with America's finest, man. It feels like it feels cool to be in the same conversation with you guys. Katelyn, circling back to your story first, and then I'll circle back to Eric's. But it seemed like the qualities that you have during this whole time is you were super flexible or up for the next task or, just super open to do anything like that. I kind of describe that mindset of you were just open to the next door. Like the doors are open and you just walk right through them.
Man, I don't even know. Like going through that whole process, I was just like, all right, what can we do? What's next? What are my options? What kind of sounds fun and cool? And yeah, my mom says that I have like ADHD or something because I just move around all the time. I'm just super go with the flow, and she's just not that way at all. So I guess I was like, oh, let me just be the opposite, not intentionally kind of being the opposite, but I was just like, all right, where to next? Like, what can we do? Let's go.
Mhm.
Um, was kind of just how I was throughout that whole time. No real plan in sight, but it all kind of works out, which is, I guess, the crazy awesome thing with that.
It seems that some people, when they get the news that they don't necessarily want, they'll stop dead in their tracks and stop trying or quit opening themselves up for different opportunities. And you did the exact opposite in that, which I super admire. You were like, okay, it might not be what I want to do, but I'm going to get towards it by going to the next thing. So you just kept going forward, which I think is super admirable.
Heck yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I have no idea. I was just like, what are we gonna do? All right, figure it out. Let's
Mm,
go.
yeah.
Yeah, because opportunity presented itself, and you were just all about it. So
Absolutely.
And Eric, what my question was for, like, what brought you back? Like, I know that you said that you loved I know you better now, but the schedule, and you said you always, like, were missing that void. Like, talk about that a little bit. What brought you back to the Army?
it was just something that the Army provided, whether it be camaraderie or um,
You think you missed
tribunal,
the structure? Like the
community.
structure of
Yeah,
it?
something that I didn't have on the civilian side.
Mhm.
And I was trying to like find my way. I was trying to do what I had, and I kind of felt lost, bro. No purpose, no mission, no vision as to where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. Even though I've always wanted to be a firefighter, the opportunities weren't available when I got back. So I just had to I just went back to where I
That's
was
a rare
comfortable. I guess
story.
for lack of a better term, I went back to where I was comfortable at and I seeked belonging.
Mm.
You know.
That's a rare story of people in the military get out and be like, "Oh, I miss it. Go back in." Or does that happen more than often?
I want to say it happens more often than not.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's what I've kind of learned just being around a whole bunch of people in the guard is a lot of them were active duty. And even in OCS, we had a couple Marines, former Marines who'd gotten out and they're like, man, I miss this. Like, I miss the community, the discipline, the structure. And they always say, like, being in the military, you learn like a new language, like all of these acronyms and just serving a bigger purpose, like with firefighting, with being a first responder, that if you don't get out and get into one of those professions, I think it's really easy to just you have a sense of loss. Like this was your life, this was your identity. And I've just heard a whole bunch of people, that's why they joined the guard, which is phenomenal because you have that camaraderie, you have that structure, that discipline, you have that task, mission, and purpose. And but you also get to be a civilian. So I think that's just super phenomenal with the guard in that regard.
Katelyn, let's talk about a little about what you're doing right now with this program. We've talked about it a little bit offline, but go a little bit more in depth of like the fitness stuff, a lot of the things that you do. Can we talk about that?
Absolutely.
All
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So long story short, I don't know how short this is actually going to be. I saw something on Instagram where it was like, instead of saying long story short, just start saying short story long. And I feel like this is actually how that's going to go. Is the Army realized, hey, our PT test of 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups, a 2 mile run doesn't test your fitness for combat. Like it does nothing just besides showing, hey, I can do some tasks for a certain amount of time. There's no relation of that to a firefight, pulling a wounded buddy out of harm's way, or even like I always liken climbing up a side of a mountain. Um, that test didn't really test any of that. And I think kind of with the whole people are at desk jobs all the time. Society's just gotten so unfit. Like there's so many people now who don't even qualify to join the military because of how unhealthy and how unfit a lot of our society has become. And this is just my opinion there. But the Army then was like, all right, we need a new fitness test. And this test had been like in research since the early 2000s, I believe. I'm not entirely sure on that. But they're like, hey, we need to retest fitness and see, hey, are our soldiers actually capable to do what we need them to do when they're asked to do it? So in 2019 or 2020, they started rolling out the Army Combat Fitness Test, the ACFT, which instead of those 3 events, it's now 6 events. So it is a 3 rep max deadlift with a hex bar, a standing power throw. So you have a medicine ball, you have to backwards throw it over your head. A sprint drag carry, which you sprint down, sprint back, carry 2 kettlebells down and back, lateral shuffle down and back, and then you have to drag a sled. Actually, I think I got out of order, but you drag a sled down and back, and then you sprint down and back again. Then hand release push-ups. So you have to get now full range of motion in your push-ups, which is great because your chest now has to touch the ground. No more row reps on those push-ups.
Hell yeah. Louder for the people in the
Yeah,
back.
full range of motion. Um, and then it was originally a leg tuck, which your hands were like this on a pull-up bar. Your arms are extended. You have to bend your arms 90 degrees, get your knees to touch your elbows there. They got rid of that and replaced it with a plank. So there's this Instagram group going around called Leg Tuck Nation. So I'm in that one. And then the Army could not get rid of their 2-mile run. So at the end of those 5 events, you have to do another event, the 2-mile runs. In that, they're like, whoa, we need to focus not just on running anymore. So physical fitness kind of redefined. And then in 2020, they came out with a new field manual, FM 7-0, encompassing holistic health and fitness. So those 5 domains of individual readiness, the physical, mental, spiritual, sleep, and nutrition. And then they were like, okay, big Army, so active duty is going to start outfitting brigade combat teams with this human performance team, so an HPT. And in it, you have your H2F director, you have physical therapists, occupational therapists, registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and strength conditioning coaches.
The Avengers.
And that's phenomenal. They have soldier performance readiness centers at these brigades. So like a whole indoor complex where offices for all those individuals, turf, strength training equipment, indoor ACFT fields, all this phenomenal stuff, which is amazing. And then they're like, okay, National Guard, you have no money, but you need to start implementing H2F. But you also only see most of your soldiers for 39 days every year if they do their drills, their 2-day drills every month, and a 15-day annual training in the summer, typically. So no money. Here's your theoretical framework on what H2F is. Go make it happen. And so the states are like, excuse me, what? So we got funding to bring on 2 personnel, the OIC and the NCOIC for the program, the officer in charge and the non-commissioned officer in charge. And so I came in, and in Tennessee, my NCO is phenomenal, Sergeant Weichert. He created a 19-day program. So what we do, we call it GRIT, Guard Readiness Improvement Training, because everything in the Army has to have an acronym.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. So it's a 19-day training. There's a 15-day annual training. The next month, a 2-day drill, and then the following month, a 2-day drill. So it's over like a 2 to 3 month time frame. And what we've done here in Tennessee is we've brought soldiers who are flagged, meaning flag for favorable. I forget exactly what a flag stands for.
Doesn't
But
sound good.
no, so they have not passed their PT test, or they have not met. The Army has Army Regulation 600-9, I believe, which is the Army body composition standards. So there's a certain, based off of your height, there's a certain weight requirement, meaning, hey, you can't be overweight. You also can't be underweight. However, if you're overweight or underweight, they will tape you to kind of measure body fat standards, which is not the most accurate measure for body fat. But it's the most standardized and the easiest to use and broad scale that the Army had. So we got soldiers who weren't meeting those standards who weren't passing their ACFT. And so we would in-depth detail, go into each domain, help them out with all of those. And so we got soldiers who were kind of really struggling in that domain. We got to deep dive with them. And the crazy thing, so we've run 3 of those courses, 1 in 2023 and then 2 this past year. And I've been able to help out with the last 2 we've done. But in that first one, so on day 2 and then again on day 19, so that 2 to 3 month time period later, this is the craziest fact. So we do a bunch of tests and measures, but like including we do 4 ACFTs, 4 height weight measurements, all of that. But we also do on day 2 and day 19, we do a blood draw. So we measure their triglycerides, their blood glucose, and their lipid panel, all of that. And in that first course, we had 8 soldiers who were pre-diabetic and didn't know it. And then on day 19, that 2 to 3 month time period later, they were no longer pre-diabetic. And I'm not gonna lie, I get goosebumps every
That's
time I
cool.
say that. We've been able to have two reenlistments from that, a few promotions because they got their flags lifted. So if you're flagged, you can't promote or reenlist. So we've gotten their flags lifted, able to reenlist, able to promote, able to stay in and serve. But it's crazy because it's not just physical. Like something in their life has happened to where like, hey, we had a girl who in college, she did ROTC. She was phenomenal. She was running all the time. But 2 to 3 years later, she'd gotten into social working. She was a social worker and she was just working long days. She was super stressed because of her job. Like she was seeing a lot of stuff with kids that, I mean, it's just hard to see. So she had to had let herself go a little bit and came to our course and was able to kind of turn her life around. She's now doing CrossFit, which I'm like, heck yeah. Exactly. Bless it. And
The Lord's
like
work.
just amazing stuff like that. Like something in their life has changed. So like, hey, it's usually not just physical. It's what is the underlying issue? How can we help you with that and get you back into eating healthy, focusing on your physical regimen and all of that?
Mm. So I'm gonna
Scientific
circle.
based,
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
scientific based numbers to measure as a baseline. This is where you're at currently. Go through the program. Let's get some workouts in. Let's clean
Mm.
up your eating habits. Let's teach you how to eat. What are you doing outside of the gym? Because the 23 hours
Exactly.
outside the gym are just as important as that 1 hour inside the gym. So I could
Mm-hmm.
control you within that first hour at the gym, across the gym or whatnot, but what I can't be there with you, 24/7. And what are you doing outside the gym? Which is like the work, where the work is done. Um,
Absolutely.
Everyone, I'm sure Riley gets this all the time. Oh, what's the workout? What's the programming? What can we do? How can we work? Yeah, that's important. But what you do outside the gym is just as important as what you do inside the gym. So, yeah. But it's cool to see like the evidence base and have the numbers, have something tangible. Okay, this is proof that what we're doing is working. And that's awesome.
Well, and then that's too how, because we don't get a lot of funding, we get our two positions. The state has had to, okay, these soldiers, they're already pretty much non-deployable. So are they going to benefit from going to annual training with their unit and doing all of these tasks, battle drills, all of that, if we can't deploy them and actually use them? Or can we send them to this grit program, turn their life around, get them back on track so that, hey, next year they're able to train with their unit. They're able to get back and do their soldier tasks that they need to do. So we've been blessed with command support in Tennessee for this program. And because of that, we've been one of the first 8 states that'll be funded in FY26 to get a whole human performance team. So not only are my positions and Sergeant Weichert's going to continue to be funded to the OIC and NCOIC, but we're also getting 3 contractors, so a strength coach, a registered dietitian, and an athletic trainer here in the state, and only 8 states are getting that in FY26. And it's because we've been able to show
Mhm.
that data to the
I
higher
think
ups.
this is so freaking cool, and I think people need to hear this story. Like, big army or the army doing the right thing and like doing it the right way. Like,
Oh
we
yeah.
can debate about that all you want, but it seems like the army is taking the necessary steps to take care of their people. And I can't speak to it because I never was in the army, but people sometimes leave the army with a bad experience or hold grudges against army or whatever. But it seems they're doing better inside taking care of their people.
Oh yeah.
My other question is reverting back to the new test. So what was the acronym? What was the acronym for the test?
The ACFT, the Army
Yeah. Okay.
Combat Fitness Test.
So, I mean, I'll say it. Sounds a lot like CrossFit, but we'll proceed with that. We've had so many people here in Columbia come from Fort Jackson and have asked us, can this help me? Can Carolina CrossFit help me increase my score on this test? And I'm like, well, duh. Like, this is the best kind of training you can do that translates for that test. we've had multiple people show up here on, some type of education deployment, or like they're doing some type of training at Jackson, train with us for 3 months. They do a pre-test, and at the end of their, run education course here with working at CCF or working out at CCF, they've increased their scores like through the roof. There's
Mm-hmm.
been 3 or 4 of them that have come through and said just working out here 3 to 4 times a week has improved my PT score tenfold. So it's cool. It's cool to see that that works, and it's cool to see that Army's taking care of the people.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I've done CrossFit now for 9.5 years. I was coaching for a good 7 of those. I haven't been coaching since I moved here. Um, but I'm a believer that it works, and it doesn't have to be CrossFit, like any kind of functional fitness, but getting those weights in, getting like weights under fatigue, and getting that cardio aerobic capacity up, like I found that that has helped me. I had no issues with that test. I was actually excited when they changed it because I was like, oh, I mean, I guess I can excel in like push-ups and sit-ups. Running was always my weak suit because I like to lift weights. I like to move weights. But I'm just excited now that so this new test is easier to pass, but it's harder to max. Um, is what we've all found out. So, I mean, yeah, do some functional fitness training. I'm always going to be a promoter of CrossFit. I love it, the community aspect of it, showing up. I can just show up and a coach leads me through the warm up, shows me any movements I don't need to do or don't know how to do. We all do the same thing together. There's some scales and modifications, of course, but then there's always a coach there keeping you safe if you're going to classes and it's a good CrossFit gym, which I know personally Carolina CrossFit is. So,
Riley, I would challenge you or urge you to start documenting the
Mm.
soldiers that go through,
I've got one
Carolina
in mind
CrossFit.
that I definitely think that we could turn into a almost I don't want to say a poster board, but an advertisement or just a
Well,
testimonial. That sounds
well,
better.
yeah, okay, yeah, just to have numbers because CrossFit is evidence based and it is all like measurements and is numbers, is
Yeah.
facts based. I can speak on me regarding the 2 minute push up, the 2 minute sit ups, and the 2 mile run. I used to max that out, but then I couldn't, you know, pick up my body weight in a deadlift, or I couldn't dummy drag, my boy that was heavy, 250 pounds plus. I couldn't, I was weak, but I could max out the PT, the Army PT test. So I didn't transfer over into, you know, combat or, anything functional. So that was a rude awakening for me, and that's what really got me to started lifting and starting to like do functional movements. And back then it was the Spartan, the 300 workout that we were doing overseas, because we all wanted to be Spartans, but not knowing that we were doing some type of CrossFit. It was called Jim Jones back then.
mhm.
So that's what led me to like put in the work and start lifting weights, because if God forbid we had any of our guys go down, I was gonna have to respond, and I couldn't respond, at the time. So yeah.
I
Eric,
mean,
how do
yeah,
you feel
especially
about that
being a medic
change?
there.
Do you feel
Oh,
good about the PT test change, or do you think that, it's old school is old school, new school is new school? Sometimes you'll
Well,
hear,
as you're asking me that question, I'm thinking that the old school PT test was just a standard. Can you do these movements, in the time allotted, and can you, I mean, the justification for the push-ups was upper body strength, and then the sit-ups was like core strength or core stability, and then the 2 mile run was just cardiovascular endurance. Do you have these qualities? Are you then considered fit? Um, so as a standard, it did its job, because it was equal across the board. It was measurable across the board. But does it translate over into real world and combat? It does not. So I guess with the new Army PT test, it does somewhat, carrying weights, farmer's carry, and then dragging a sled, and then running, and then sprinting, zigzagging. And yes, these are all things that you do on the battlefield and are transferable to like combat. So
so Caitlin, when is the next course start for you guys?
So we have them, they need to be approved by state, but ideally we're going to be running 3 of those courses in FY25, which begins in October. So we're super excited for those.
Do you think that you'll see bigger sizes of the class, or is there X amount of spots each time? Like, how many individuals are coming through these classes?
We had, I think 18 in the first class, 14 in the second, and we just had 17 in this third class. And kind of with the National Guard, you're always fighting for money, fighting for funds, especially like, hey, we're taking these soldiers out of their unit training. So we're capping classes right now at 40, just because we want that more personalized experience. With our coaches. So our coaches have to be either master fitness trainers, or it's now an H2F integrator, or master resiliency trainers, so that we can get that mental readiness aspect in. So we want to have kind of small groups led by that larger instructor who leads the whole class, gives a lot of the briefs, but then it breaks down into a lot of small group discussion. So kind of keeping them smaller so that we can keep that more personalized feel.
So, this is the Uncivil Mentality podcast, but under our umbrella, we have training gear. We, as
Right?
firefighters, Eric and I, we talk about training in our gear a lot. Talk about the gear that you wear in the military and your thoughts on training in the gear that you will have to perform in.
So I'm gonna be honest. I don't really train a whole lot in my gear. Now, if I go out in a ruck, I will make sure that I have my boots on so that my feet are right with those. Sometimes I'll carry my rucksack. Sometimes I'll have a backpack that I've attached a waist strap to, and just put weights in the back of that and go out for rucks. Um, I have not rucked in a while. I personally don't really work out a whole lot in my gear. Um, I've never been in combat either, so I know full combat load, you have your
IBA,
body armor,
yeah,
your
vest,
ABA, you have your
K-pod.
helmet,
Hmm.
and then a flick front load carrier that carries all your magazines, anything else that you would need. Personally, I don't wear a lot of that. It stays at the armory for the most part, so that we don't lose it, because I've signed for it, and if I lose it, I have to pay for it, or if I damage it, I have to pay for it, and I don't want to do that. And I have not yet gone out and gotten all of this stuff on my own. So easy enough to put on a backpack. I'll train. I do have my own body armor, so plate vest with body armor plates in it. So every now and then, especially as we get closer to Murph Memorial Day,
Mm.
I'll train a little bit more in that. And every now and then, like, it sits in the back of my car. So if there's programmed, usually a hero workout at a CrossFit gym, if it has a weight vest, I'll throw that on and do it. But for the most part, I shorts and a t-shirt. A lot of times that t-shirt comes off when I work out, because of CrossFit.
Eric, tell us a little bit, obviously, a little bit more about that stuff that you carry when you're downrange.
Yeah, well, boots, timing boots, boots on ground was a big thing, especially if you get new boots, you gotta break them in. And then it was real thin socks, borderline pantyhose, that you'll wear on your feet, and then you'll have another extra layer of socks on top of that, just so the blistering, because feet care um, is is a thing. You gotta take
Mm.
care of your feet. If you have a
Mm-hmm.
sore or blister or you have an ingrown toe nail, you're hindered, or you're just so focused on, man, my feet are hurting, that you're not really focused on what you're doing. I'm just speaking about my experience. Um, so yeah, boots was a big thing. Rucksacks, um, and the way you pack the rucksack, you want all the weight on top of the actual backpack or rucksack. That way, it's not low load bearing as compared to high load bearing. And then you want your waist strapped. You want your shoulder straps tight down, not too tight where it cuts circulation, but on your back, so it feels like an extension of your back and that it's not flailing or loose. And then yeah, so those were the rucksacks. Those were the hikes that we would
How
go
how
on.
much? How much weight?
45 to 60 pounds to 80 pounds. That way,
That's
when you
nuts.
do high loads, heavy loads, when you put on a low or lower load, it doesn't seem that taxing. So you want to always train, heavier than what you know, than what the fight is or what the pack is. Um, so that way, when you're in it, it doesn't feel like shit. Um,
Which one do you prefer, firefighter gear or military gear? Which one's worse?
the worst for me is our structural gear, our bunker gear. Now, there's nothing like it, bro. I'm telling you, there's the mop suit. It doesn't even do it justice. I was in mop suit one time, and we had our gas mask on, and we had to sip through the canteen, through the straw, whatnot. It was, it sucked, but it was bearable. Our structural firefighting gear is not tolerable. I just, bro, I can't put my finger on it. I'm trying to decipher it, and I just have to put my time in gear. I want to say like the thermal regulation of my body, or it's something's, I don't know. I just don't dissipate heat. I was a heat casualty at one point in the army. I was in Camp Bullis, Texas. Humidity was high, and I exhausted myself trying to be a hero. I was fireman carrying people, and we had patients, and we were litter carries, and I had a flak vest on, and I want to say like I stopped sweating at one point, and I was like, I went down. I needed an IV. I was super hot. My skin was red, and I felt like death. I was like, man, and I was taken to sick call. I was taken to the hospital. Yeah. So that was rude.
I'll say
That
I'll
was
say shout out to our boys at Karna Bunker Gear. I have quickly realized that this gear that they make is hotter than our structural gear. I swear, you can't tell me anything different. And it's also cotton. So as you're sweating, it absorbs the sweat. So this second, we did Murph the other day, and the second mile of Murph, I swear, like I'm running, I'm like, I'm 5 pounds heavier than the first mile because all the sweat that has accumulated in this gear. It is insane. That was
Oh,
gnarly, but shout out to our boys at Karna Bunker Gear.
I see your gear, and is it similar to like the EOD? Did Ryan ever talk about the similarities between Karna bunker gear and EOD, like explosive ordnance disposal? They have their
I'm
gear.
not
It's all
completely
Kevlar.
sure on that. I'm not sure.
It, man, I see those guys, those EOD guys in that gear, and I'm just like, man,
That makes our stuff look like child's play.
I think so.
man.
Kevlar bomb suits is a my dude is a bomb suit. you know? So back to the army training and gear. Yeah. We would do fit for fight or fit to fight, and we'll do 12 mile rucks with a 40-pound pack and full suit, like um, helmet, you know, IBA, which is the anti-ballistic armor. Um, our weapon, right? Our M4 or M16, whichever one was issued to you. And so you have that. And so on the rucksack, you have a strap. And sometimes I just put the strap through like the sights of the M16 just so it could like rest on my body. Cause man, you're holding that weapon at the low ready, and my dude, you're like, it's taxing. So, and you find, and one of the techniques was walk, run, or jog, run between light posts. That way you could, be under that time cap. So there's that. I remember my first 12 miler. It was over 3 hours, and the next day I could not move. It was my first introduction to rucking, and I was not ready for what I was about to encounter. And so I finished the ruck. I didn't feel too bad. The next day, my feet were swollen. My back felt like it was its own entity. It was detached from my body. I was super sore. I was like, what the just happened to me? I could not move. And I was like, man, I need to get better. I feel pathetic right now. I don't feel fit. And you just got to put your body under those stresses so your body can adapt. That's just it.
I've seen a couple guys during like a 5K just have a ruck, and they'll just be, just St. Patrick's Day in Columbia, South Carolina. Some dude's got his ruck on, drinking a beer, just chugging along. I'm like, bro, are you okay? He's like, he said, no, I'm not okay, but I'll be fine. And he just keep going. He's just a little 1-2 and just all the way down. But that running with the ruck, that is tough.
Running with
That's
load
tough sledding.
is, yeah. And your back has to be sound. Your back has to be, you know, it has to be 100% because any tweak, any misalignment or any twist or something, your back could go. So, yeah, that's why there's so many back issues.
Hmm.
Katelyn, let's talk a little bit about you as a physical therapist. Are you still currently doing that? Or let's talk about what's your favorite parts of being a physical therapist that you have, the experience that you had.
So I only actually practiced physical therapy for that 1 year down in Georgia. And it was great, but with it, I was only helping one person at a time. Uh, so I mean, getting that hands on, and it's a lifestyle change. Like, hey, they come in with this injury or this nagging thing that's been going on for a while, or it's been going on because they haven't been active, they haven't been doing exercise. So getting them into it's a lifestyle change, getting them into working out, getting them into moving more. Um, some of my favorite things to see were low back pain. And a lot of it was people were just sitting for so long at a desk or whatnot. And so one of my favorite things to give out were movement snacks. So just like you have to feed your body with fuel, your body wants to move. Movement is medicine, as we would say. So I'd give them movement snacks throughout the day. Hey, on your phone, super easy, you set a timer for 60 minutes. When that 60 minutes is up, as long as you're not in a meeting or whatnot, like get up, do a few air squats, walk down the hall, come back, do a couple push-ups, do something every kind of hour on the hour. Even if it's, hey, I'm sitting, this next hour I'm going to stand, or I'm going to stand for about 5-10 minutes, then sit back down. But just that changing position so that you're not constantly in one position, letting everything just settle. So just as movement is medicine, we always like to say, hey, rest is rust. Um, so your body was made to move. So that was one of my favorite things to see. Loved helping with high skill, taking that CrossFit training. Like, hey, you always have pain with kipping pull-ups. How many strict pull-ups do we have? Do we have that strength to be able to be swinging around on a bar? Okay, you have kipping pull-ups really well. You want to muscle up. Just like in CrossFit, we got to break down, give them specific skills, drills to work on to build up that skill. Um, Potentially working around an injury, working through an injury, but getting them back into movement, the movement that they wanted to do.
Do you prefer working with civilians or do you like working more with the military?
I love working with the military. With this, I get to just help so many more people at once. And they're all soldiers, so they're all kind of working towards that bigger purpose of protecting and defending our freedoms. But just helping more of them at once through this role here.
It's rewarding.
Yeah.
What
Absolutely.
specialty within the physical therapy is it? Occupational therapy, rehabilitation, sports medicine, sports specific?
So I was working at a outpatient, a cash-based practice. So we didn't take insurance. So if they wanted to come see us, they would pay a lump sum in full in that session. So a lot of those patients were very highly motivated to then get better, and do kind of what we had them do at home. So that was extremely rewarding.
What I
So
hear when I hear you speak, Caitlin, I think and kind of I see that you have a servant's mindset. Like you're a servant leader. How do you keep that mindset up while why it's hard when it's tough to do what you're doing? What do you tell yourself when it's hard to be a leader or a servant leader?
Oof. I've never like And I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine a few weeks ago. I've never thought of myself as a leader. Because when I thought of leader, it was always like authority figure. So like your teachers, your professors, um, your commanders. So I've never thought of myself as a leader. But kind of reflecting on that in that conversation and what my friend told me, he was like, look, like, you lead by example. You lead by caring for the people that you work with, and work for. So I guess my mindset is just, all right, I'm going to be the best role model example that I can be. And just be humble. I think that's been the most, like, I'm not the smartest person in the room ever. I am not the most fit. I can always learn something from everyone that I meet. And I just try and remember that everywhere I go.
Absolutely.
That's sound. But you're a coach,
Yeah.
and you're the OIC of grit.
Yeah, I have all these titles.
You have all these
But
titles.
But
it's sometimes the best leaders have that they don't even think that they're leading. You know, they just do the right thing for the right reasons at the right time. Like just it's in your chromosomes. It's deep in you. Like you don't have to think about being a leader because that's who you are.
yeah.
I know it's tough to talk about and like humble brag, but that's what people see that. You know, you know it, and when people tell you, it's okay. Erik, you got anything for her?
What's next?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
ADOS, is that like AGR, active guard?
so it's active duty, but it's solely just based off of funding.
Okay.
So thankfully in Tennessee, we were one of the first 8 states
Yeah.
to be funded.
Correct.
So we'll get funding for this position next year in FY27. We'll get it in FY26 or 25, 26, and then they're going to fund us again in FY27. And there's a whole bunch of return on investment metrics that we have to show National Guard Bureau that they will then take to active duty Army to show, hey, this program is
Mhm.
working. You need to continue to fund us. So
Yeah. And
I'm
with
just working
your
on getting all those metrics.
evidence base, right? With those numbers, you're doing exactly that. So yeah, it's definitely needed. I didn't have that in the guard. It would have been cool though, you know.
I feel so good about the future of the army, of the armed forces, of the military, knowing that they have these programs in place now. Like they're gonna keep their people longer, and their people are gonna feel taken care of. And I think that's how you build a good team. Your team wants to
Oh,
feel like you're taking care of them, and they will work for you until the end of time if they feel valued, if they feel like you give a about them, to be honest. But it seems like they're putting systems in place to make the soldiers feel part of the team.
oh, absolutely.
I have another question regarding the Army combat test. Is it done in uniform with boots
Uh,
and
it's done in
ACUs?
PTs. In
It's done in
PTs.
PTs, and so sneakers.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I mean the Army physical fitness uniform, just a shirt, shorts, and sneakers.
Mhm.
Gotcha. I saw somewhere they were doing it in combat boots and ACUs, or that was just like a trial thing or someone training,
Could have
maybe.
been.
We always like to ask this questions as we're finishing up. What kind of like mantras do you say in your head when something's getting hard or when you're having a difficult task? Like what's your internal monologue when you face adversity?
Um, hmm. I'm gonna think. So when I think adversity and when things get hard is like usually when I'm rucking, and I'm not tall, as some would say. I'm very vertically challenged. So rucking for me has just always been hard, and I'm usually with a bunch of tall dudes who can just stride it out. And carrying load that's like a fifth or more of my body weight, I'm just like in my head, I'm like, don't be a bitch. Just keep going. Come on, if they can do it, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like people smaller than you are passing you. Like, okay, catch up and just go. Like, let's do it. Let's go. Don't be a bitch.
That's a repeat. That's a
That
repeat
yeah,
mantra we're hearing a
that
lot of
seems to be
people.
the general consensus when, facing adversity is just
I
don't
feel
be a
like
bitch.
it's super powerful, and I think a lot of people use it, including myself. So,
People from all walks of
Absolutely.
life.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's universal.
Army,
It's
I mean,
trans
firefighters.
it
it'll
transcends.
end eventually.
Mm, that's right.
So
Yeah, this
Suffering
too
will
will
always
pass,
end.
right? Right.
Yeah,
This too shall pass. This has to have an endpoint, right? Yeah.
Well, Katelyn, we're super grateful for you to come on here today. We love sharing your story. We love hearing from you. First of all, thank you for your time. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.
Well,
Thank
hopefully
you,
in a
ma'am.
year we can touch base and see even more of this evidence-based, holistic wellness in the Army. So keep doing the work that you're doing. We need you. Like the United States needs you. I know that sounds weird. You're humble, but we need more like you.
I'm here for it. Let's go.
Absolutely.
So, to all the viewers and listeners out there, the Uncivil Mentality Podcast, thank you for joining us. On behalf of myself, Erik Vidal,
And I'm Reilly. Kilbride. Get after it. Get in your gear. Start training. It can never be enough.